All right, excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us. We're in beautiful British Columbia, just adjacent to the Port of Vancouver. And we're going to get started here on our Green Corridor First Mover Media Availability. And so I'm Peter McGraw. I'm the media officer at the Port of Seattle. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to be recording this session, and we are going to be making it available to the public once it's complete. Just to give you an idea here of the run of show, we are going to be hearing from Port of Seattle Executive Director Steve Metrick, Port of Seattle Commissioner Fred Fellman, Port of Seattle Commissioner Hamdi Mohammed. We will then be hearing from Port of Vancouver Fraser President and CEO Robin Sylvester. We'll be hearing from City and Borough of Juneau City Manager Rory Watt and Tourism Manager Alexandra Pierce. We'll then be hearing from Jan Schwartz, who's the Group President of Holland America Group. We'll be hearing from Kelly Craghead, President and CEO, Cruise Line International Association, Jesse Fonstock of the Global Maritime Forum, and we will then be facilitating any questions you may have. I will just ask for the group to remain on mute if you are not going to be speaking. And with that, I hand it over to our Executive Director, Steve Metrick.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Steve Metrick, Executive Director for the Port of Seattle. Good afternoon. We're very eager to announce today a new commitment by the Port of Seattle, the City and Borough of Juneau, Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, global cruise leaders, and experts in decarbonization to explore the feasibility of a cruise-led green corridor to accelerate the deployment of zero greenhouse gas emission ships and operations between Alaska, British Columbia, and Washington State. Our partners, some of whom are joining us here today, are Carnival Corporation and its cruise brands, including Princess Cruises, Holland America Line, Carnival Cruise Line, Seabourn, and Cunard. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings and its cruise brands, including Norwegian Cruise Line, Oceania Cruises, and Regent Seven Seas Cruises. Royal Caribbean Group, including its brands Royal Caribbean International, Celebrity Cruises, and Silver Sea Cruises. Cruise Lines International Association, the world's largest cruise industry trade association. And decarbonization experts, Global Maritime Forum, Blue Sky Maritime Coalition, and Washington Maritime Blue. Together with our first mover partners, we are taking these first steps, working to explore the feasibility of a green corridor between Alaska, British Columbia, and Washington, including but not limited to further defining the scope and application of the green corridor concept, supporting and enhancing the emission reduction efforts already underway, and using the green corridor as a testbed for low and zero greenhouse gas technologies and ships as feasible, and working collaboratively to define the governance structures, terms, and frameworks needed to guide this regional effort. As we begin our initial work to examining the feasibility of the green corridor, we expect that more partners and more industries may join us, and we welcome that. We expect to convene a meeting of all partners in the next 30 days, and that will kick off work on a charter for the green corridor, and then to develop a work plan based on that charter. This is a collaborative process by design to accommodate the very different circumstances and resources for each of the partners. I think it's important to note that this is a voluntary commitment that we all willingly undertake. I now want to introduce Port of Seattle Commissioner Fred Fellman, who's been a strong leader for our port sustainability vision, to say a few words. Commissioner Fellman.
Thank you, Steve. I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the efforts of port staff who have put together this great deal of effort and energy to launch this partnership. In particular, as retired Admiral, Vice Admiral of the Coast Guard, Executive Metrick is exceptionally skilled at leading maritime initiatives. While these initial steps towards creating a green corridor are small, these first movers are coming together around the need to address the most pressing issue of our time, climate change. Shipping currently represents 3% of the global climate emissions, will grow to 17% by 2050, unless actions are taken. Needs to address through partnerships between ports, cruise lines, scientists, regulators, and the public. A green card that brings together these stakeholders by a strategy appropriate trade. The cruise industry represents a small percentage of the global shipping emissions. Energy demands of each ship makes this initial focus on the value. Or broad looking private invest together.
You know,
Starting in this
Commissioner,
geographic region also makes
Commissioner,
sense.
I'm really
That'll-
sorry to interrupt you. This is Kathy Roeder, but your feed is a little bit broken, and I don't want to miss anything. So I wonder if maybe try turning off your camera there to save a little bandwidth. I'm sorry, we're losing.
Okay, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, apologies. I've missed at least half of your statement, including a lot of your statistics.
I think we may have lost the commissioner in general. Perhaps he could.
Is there any?
Oh, there he is. Actually, try that again. I don't think that's any better. Can you maybe go to Steve's machine or something? Yeah, great.
Yep, we're switching commissioner now. Hold on just a moment.
It was crackly the whole time.
We're hearing you loud and clear now.
It was crackly. My apologies. Technology's got the best of me. Would you like me to start again?
Yes.
Okay, I can't even hear myself here.
Would you like me to
All right then. Sorry again. I'd like to start by thanking Steve and all the folks that brought this together. All right. And the staff who really pulled together in a very quick amount of time this partnership that will be valuable for us into the long-term future. And we are very indebted to Executive Metric, who, as a Vice Admiral of the Coast Guard, knows how to work in these international maritime fora with a particular capability. Now, while these initial steps of bringing together a green corridor are small, the first movers that we have gathered here today are coming together to address one of the most pressing needs of the time, climate change. And shipping, while represents 3% of the global emissions currently, it will grow to 17% by 2050 unless significant actions are taken now. Such a pressing challenge needs to be addressed through partnerships between ports, cruise lines, scientists, regulators, and the public. And a green corridor brings together these stakeholders to address strategies appropriate to the specific trade. The cruise industry represents a small percent of the global shipping emissions, but the high energy demands of each ship makes this initial focus of particular value. Lessons learned from here can surely be applied more broadly across the public and private sectors. Starting in this geographic region also makes sense in that Alaska and Washington State have been intrinsically linked since the Aboriginal canoes served as the first freighters. Since the Klondike, we've been connected from gold to gasoline, groceries to guests. It's also particularly important in that we have the opportunity to work internationally with our partner ports in British Columbia. Many people are drawn to live and work in the Great Northwest for its wild and scenic beauty. This is also why the Alaska market is so important to the cruise industry. However, the northern latitudes are experiencing some of the most dramatic impacts from climate change, which underscores the importance of taking ambitious and immediate action here. At the same time, we're committed to helping maritime industries thrive and to be, because they are an essential part of Washington and Alaska's economy and culture. Together, we can support and enhance the significant innovative decarbonization efforts that are already underway. By exploring the development of this green corridor, we're bringing together the people, resources, and technological advancements to focus on this region so that commercially viable zero greenhouse gas ships will sail in the near future. But we're not naive about the challenges ahead. We recognize the urgency to act as we transition to the inclusive blue economy that works for the climate, commerce, and communities alike. It's now my honor to turn the microphone over to my colleague, Commissioner Mohammed.
Thank you, Commissioner Fred Bellman. Good afternoon. I am Hamdi Mohammed, one of your Port of Seattle commissioners elected by the voters of King County. I believe that we as ports and maritime industry leaders have the necessary resources to help our community and planet to overcome one of the most urgent challenges of our time, climate change. Combating this reality of climate change takes honesty, accountability, and innovation. The Port of Seattle, for the Port of Seattle, this first movers commitment is an evolution of a commitment we've made to become a zero emissions port by 2050. Thank you to our Port of Seattle staff, Executive Steve Metrick, and all of the partners here today for joining the first movers commitment. Thank you for your leadership. We all here truly believe that the Pacific Northwest is the most logistical home for one of the first US-based green corridors and the first global green corridor to join to include cruise ships as well. Plans already are underway for the Pacific Northwest ports and states to chart a course to a zero greenhouse gas emission future. And we are excited to explore the feasibility of expanding those commitments to a regional cruising and shipping corridor between Seattle and Alaska. Our communities and planet need this. We are ready. A green corridor and the transition away from fossil fuels can accelerate environmental justice for the communities already impacted by climate change and issues that are priority, and those issues are priorities for Washington State and also Alaska. That is part of our investment in the future success of our shared maritime industry. I hope this effort to explore a green corridor builds an even stronger platform for innovation and sustainability across all maritime industries. I truly believe we can lead the way together. Now I have the honor of inviting City of Bruno of Juneau Tourism Representative Alexandra Pierce to make her remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that actually I'll be speaking next. Rory
Alex,
Watt,
you're still
Municipal
muted.
Manager for the City and Borough of Juneau. Very much appreciate the opportunity to speak. Juneau is a leader on sustainability initiatives and the ideas embraced by the initial charter completely align with our community values. We're a leader as the community that built the first shore power electric system for cruise ships in the world. We lead on electric vehicles. Our citizenry are buying electric vehicles in great numbers. We're pioneering use of electric buses in our municipal transit system. We're initiating innovative measures on installing heat pumps. And we think we're well situated to help organize the region, collaborate with industry, and find ways to move forward on really difficult issues. And I think if not communities like Juneau and entities like the Port of Seattle and the cruise ship companies, then who is going to make progress on it? So we're very, very excited, aligned with our values, and we look forward to actively tackling this big topic. Thank you.
Alexandra, are you planning on making any remarks or just handing off to Vancouver Fraser Port Authority?
Thank you. I believe we can just hand off to Vancouver Fraser for Port Authority, but since I'm here, I will say that we believe strongly that this First Mover commitment is the beginning of a great deal of work and collaboration, and I'm confident that this will foster regional innovation in a way that we at the City and Borough of Juneau are really excited about.
Okay, I guess that's over to me. So I'm Robin Sylvester. Good afternoon. I'm President and CEO of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. It's my pleasure to be part of this announcement today. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking here from Canada Place at the Port of Vancouver on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, and extend my thanks to them. It really is great to be here on behalf of the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. We're an arm's-length federal government agency. We're mandated to enable trade through the Port of Vancouver. Our vision is for the Port of Vancouver to be the world's most sustainable port. For us, that's a port that's globally successful at delivering economic prosperity through trade, protecting the environment, and enabling thriving communities. We're very proud to join the Port of Seattle, destination partners in Alaska, and major cruise lines to explore the idea of a green corridor from Washington State through BC to Alaska. Today, together, we're advancing a story of cross-border environmental collaboration that began 15 years ago. Back in 2007, we joined the ports of Seattle and Tacoma, now including the Northwest Seaport Alliance, to establish the Northwest Ports Clean Air Strategy. That agreement created a framework to improve air quality and reduce port-related emissions in our common airshed. Building on that experience, in 2017, we collaborated with diverse cross-border partners, including the cruise industry, to launch the world-leading ECHO program. ECHO stands for Enhancing Cetacean Habitat and Observation. It's a program that seeks to reduce the impacts of commercial shipping on endangered southern resident killer whales with a focus on acoustic disturbance. Since its inception, the ECHO program's underwater noise reduction initiatives in the Salish Sea have encouraged thousands of ship operators to slow down or stay distanced in critical habitat for southern resident killer whales. That in turn has reduced underwater sound intensity by up to 55% in key foraging areas for these whales. So it's a terrific program. And today, we're taking another leap forward together as partners and as fellow stewards of these iconic coastlines. We're exploring together a green corridor to advance cleaner, greener shipping at the Port of Vancouver and throughout our collective region. We look forward to working with our partners, with all of you, with customers, and with port stakeholders towards that important goal. Thank you.
Okay, and if we can hear from Jan Schwartz.
Thank you. Carnival Corporation is so pleased to join the Green Corridor Coalition to help accelerate all of our efforts. We salute the Port of Seattle for its leadership in initiating this effort across so many critical partners. As many of you know, Seattle is our home, as two of our brands, Holland America Line and Seabourn, are based there. And so we've long partnered with the port on improving our impact. And we thank our friends in Alaska and Canada, which, as you know, guest destinations to our 13 ships and 5 brands who sail in this important destination, and also where many of our teammates live and work. We at Carnival Corporation have ambitious goals to achieve getting to net zero greenhouse gases, and yet we're impatient to make more progress faster to address this crucial need. Now, we have many efforts underway at Carnival Corporation to pioneer and test new approaches, like we led the shore power effort over 20 years ago with our Princess Cruises brand in Juneau, Alaska. Our internal green teams, as we call them, know that we can't achieve our goals alone. And we need strong collaboration between government and business, as well as innovation across the entire value chain and fuel supply system, as we all seek the solutions we need across the maritime industry. So we look forward to sharing our ideas and resources as a first mover in advancing our common objective of net zero greenhouse gases to achieve the urgent, important progress needed in this crucial region known for innovation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. I'm Kelly Craighead with Cruise Lines International Association, and I'm just delighted to be joining Jan and all of our other members who are represented in the First Movers Commitment and the many others that CLIA represents around the world. You know, the cruise industry is committed to being a leader in responsible tourism. We recently announced our commitment to achieve net zero carbon cruising by 2050. So the announcement today and the opportunity to collaborate and be part of this collaboration is really consistent with where the industry is. You know, we believe that collaboration is key, working with the ports and the destinations, and I'm delighted to be able to be here in Vancouver and to be working with our partners in the state of Washington and in the state of Alaska. And I know together with the experts that are joining this initiative, we'll be able to make real progress, because it will take everybody in this room, those of you who are participating virtually, and the many who have not yet been able to sign on to this initiative, to really make progress. And I think what's exciting about the cruise industry and the partnership that's being represented today is just the recognition that we all aspire to the same thing, and that our ability to achieve those goals only happen when we work together. You know, from the cruise perspective, it's clear the health of economies is, at least in the states of Washington, in Alaska and in Canada, is important. It's almost $6.5 billion that are represented. So it's important that we not only always stress the economic benefit of cruise, but also to show how cruise contributes to the health of a sustainable world by driving innovation in responsible tourism. You know, in the coming years and decades, we recognize that we'll be able to really judge our progress on the investment that's been made and the technologies and the innovations that don't yet exist, that need to exist to achieve these kind of ambitious goals. We know that signing on as part of this First Movers Commitment is just one demonstration of how the cruise industry is moving and sailing towards a better future. But to be clear, our cruise lines have already made a great deal of progress on this front. And so we are in a great position to move this process even further. So we look forward to being in this first movement or movers commitment together, and look forward to the steps that we'll take, because I think it is going to take everyone to make this really happen. And the fact that we join in this commitment is really representative of the fact that anything's possible. Thanks.
All right, great. Jesse, can we hear from you?
Yes, thanks very much. I'm Jesse Vonnestock from the Global Maritime Forum. We've been exploring and championing the concept of green shipping corridors for the last couple of years. We really think that they can be terrific accelerators for shipping's decarbonization by helping industry, ports, governments really tackle some thorny problems in a targeted and collaborative way. And when Port of Seattle first reached out to us about this concept, we were very excited and quite frankly a little surprised. We didn't anticipate, as we were working on this, that cruise would be one of the first mover segments on green corridors. But we very much agree, having looked at the concept presented, that this is a really promising opportunity, and if it can be done anywhere, it's here in the Pacific Northwest. So we're very excited to support the effort and applaud the leadership of all the partners involved.
Great. Well, thanks very much. That does conclude the presentation part of today's media availability. And with that, we'd like to open the floor up to any questions any of our guests may have. Got a question from a Mark Sabatini. Mark, your question.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm with the Juneau Empire, and Alexandra Pierce presented this to the Juneau Assembly last night, and the elected members expressed their support for it. But one of the questions from the elected members was, is there an expectation of financial contribution by the partners? Her response, and Alex, or I hope I've gotten this completely correct, her answer was essentially not at this stage. As the process takes shape and the process takes form, we'll have more of an idea of what it looks like. and that the federal government knows about this, is excited about it, and they're a potential thing. In other words, at this point, there is no financial commitment from the industry that seems to be pledged. Can anybody address this?
Well, I could, go ahead.
This is Steve Metrick. I'd be glad to just say in this point of where we are, step one is on the organization, and the organization is setting up the charter. Will be developing a charter moving forward. So we're in step one on the organization side of this before we get to, well, how is how do we make this and how do we financially make it happen? Let me just make one comment too on, questions about finance, I go to I look at the power industry, of how the power industry transitioned off coal. And there's a lot of discussion about that going forward, of saying solar was going to be too expensive or these other methods would be too expensive. And I know these issues will come to us as we move ahead and we look at this and we move down the lane. But I just want to say is that we're in the first step of the organization on the governance and then setting up the work to be done. And we know that some of the work, this question also came up. We are at the International Conference, or International Association of Ports and Harbors Conference here. And this question was a question that came up as we were discussing this earlier today. And the answer was, well, we have to look across as we develop this. The cost will be determined of that, but there's a lot of work to happen here. And we looked at to other green corridors like the one that's already in place from Los Angeles to Shanghai, to continue to collaborate with them on moving forward on that. So again, I don't have a clear answer for that, but it's more like we're taking this first step on organization and moving ahead to identify the work before us and develop that work plan.
And Steve, if you don't mind just adding on, I think that you said it right. This is a first step. And I think part of the first step is really determining the feasibility of this. There are so many ports that are important to this project. There's so many other partners that are important to this project, that determining the feasibility, including what the cost factors could be, is very much part of this first step of just announcing the intention and not presupposing the outcome, but really welcoming partners to the table so that we can really understand as we develop the feasibility what some of the challenges are going to be, so we can address them head on as they come up.
Great. Jennifer, you had a follow-up comment for Mark?
Yeah, I think Mark was also asking a bit about on the federal side, what's being done on that front. And at this point, the federal government does have several different initiatives that are connected to green shipping corridors that they're engaged with globally with different countries and in different ways. So one of the key documents that was released recently is from the U.S. Department of State on green shipping corridors. And it's a fact sheet where the federal agencies have come together to really lay a framework for what green shipping corridors can be and agree on kind of a common definition that we can use going forward. There's also several other initiatives, including the Department of Energy that has a clean energy ministerial for mission innovation with a focus on shipping decarbonization, and the green shipping corridors focus of that is within it. So there'll be an event on that in September, trying to find more alignment and identify more actions. And the Clyde Bank Declaration is another thing that was done that really focuses on green shipping corridors. And there's more. So the federal government is very much engaged in this, but really where they're engaged is trying to help promote these types of initiatives in the regions where we can get together and figure out where we're going on this and drive towards actions that we can be implementing together to tackle this difficult decarbonization challenge. But the ways that we can build on the different building blocks that we already have in place through our collaborative efforts to really get to the zero emission fuels and technologies that we need to move this forward.
Jennifer, thank you so much. Do you mind introducing yourself and your title as well?
Oh, Of course. Sorry about that. It just jumped right in. Jennifer States. I'm with Washington Maritime Blue. I'm the Vice President for Projects and Strategies. We work across all different agencies, federal government, port authorities, largely with Port of Seattle and many others, as well as industry and nonprofit members to implement collaborative projects such as this.
Great, thank you so much. We do have a question from Hal Burton of the Seattle Times for Jan Swartz. And Hal, do you just want to say your question here for the record? We can
you hear me now?
Can hear you now, Hal.
Okay, great. Yeah, Jan, thanks a lot for your time here. I was wondering if I could get some sense of what type of technologies currently, what's the mix of hydrogen or ammonia or electric? What are you looking at? What work has already been done among the cruise lines under your company's portfolio? And also some sense of, I don't know, how you measure what the current carbon footprint is for a ship, because I know it's both transportation, but then all the auxiliary fuel needs of a cruise ship, just to see like the work that you have cut out in front of you. And then just also if there are any timeframes that you've also previously announced about what you want to get to and when.
Sure. So first, to answer the questions about specific technologies. So across Carnival Corporation, we have many things already in operation, that work quite well, like shore power, as an example. We've been pioneering for 20 years. I saw in the remarks that it's important to note that many ports have made along the West Coast into Canada and Alaska have made the shore power investments along with us to enable our ships to literally plug in and turn the engines off when they come into port. That momentum has been building over the last 20 years, and we are in active conversations with additional ports in Alaska and Canada to continue that work. So there's work like that where we've been pioneering it for years. We continue to make momentum, get better and better. There's also work that we've put on select pilot ships across Carnival Corporation, where we're effectively testing out a new technology to see if it has the intended impact in terms of reduction of carbon. An example like that would be air lubrication systems. So these are systems that basically create a little carpet of bubbles underneath the hull so that it's a cleaner, it makes a easier carve through the water. It has less resistance and thus requires less energy and thus less carbon. We have found great results on our first few ships with the right hull shape on advanced lubrication systems. And so as a consequence, we're rolling those out across other vessels that have similar hulls. We also have research and development teams that are exploring everything from battery packs to new builds on order, and several of which across the corporation have already been delivered that use LNG as a dual fuel solution. So we're really excited to bring to the table our learnings right across our corporation and in various brands to share with others in the maritime sector and seek similar ideas from them so that we can accelerate our collective progress faster. I should also.
Does the research include hydrogen? Is that one of the options you're looking at, or is that off the table? Or
I think right now we consider everything on the table in terms of R&D. What I will share is we think that fuel is going to be a really important part of this potential solutions. So we also have conversations ongoing with fuel suppliers, right, about biofuels and what are potential future solutions there. And so we would look to, through this Green Corridor work, really make sure we include everyone in the required ecosystem and supply chain, right, to come together and share ideas, including the fuel dimension. So hopefully those just give you a small sampling of the many initiatives that we have underway, some fully operational fleet-wide, others in more test mode to see if it has the intended effect. And we know we can't do this alone. We need the right regulatory framework. We need the right supply chain. We need to, but we believe collaboration is the best path forward. And ultimately, to your question about just statistics, I think our collective ambition is reducing absolute carbon, right? And reducing absolute greenhouse gases. And so that's really what we all aspire to do more quickly, given the urgency of the need of the world.
And is there a 2050 goal or a 2030 goal? Because is there any targets and here's where we want to be?
Yes, we want to be at net zero greenhouse gases by 2050. And then also you'll find in our Carnival Corporation sustainability report that, you know, we've had milestones like our corporation reached actually its peak carbon in 2011 and has been declining since, even though we've grown by 25% in terms of our actual capacity. So that gives you just a sense of the order of magnitude of the progress that we're making, and yet we know we need to make more.
Thank you.
I see, Mark, you still have your hand up. Was there something you wanted to follow up on?
No, I'm not sure why it's still up. Let me fix that.
No worries, no worries. Well, I think that kind of concludes things, unless we've got any kind of last minute questions here from any of the participating media today.
Can I just throw this out to everyone? I mean, for anyone to respond, when you all look at the mix of potential fuels for actually powering these vessels, is there any consensus of which way it would be for vessels that aren't either for the longer hauls, where obviously sometimes they transit the oceans, versus shorter? Is there any sense of what technologies are getting the most focus or interest?
If my audio
works,
does it? At this
conference today, for the past 2 days, it's clearly the focus has been on ammonia and hydrogen, and those are the places that. But when and they also talk about less amount of fuel to be able to on a ship. So having these shorter port calls actually facilitates the ability to sort of, you know, refuel en route possibly, rather than a trans-Pacific crossing. So that was an encouraging thing, but those were the two fuels most spoken to, although biofuels that are not sourced from food stocks were also expressed interest in.
I see, Jennifer, you've had your hand up. Did you want to make a comment?
I just to expand on that a little bit, I mean, that is the key question that the maritime industry is really working in collaboration to address is, you know, what is our converging pathway on the future fuels and technologies that we're using? The commissioner's right that ammonia and hydrogen are certainly being talked about. Methanol has also been announced with Maersk planning to build some methanol ships. But really the challenge is we have this chicken and egg dilemma of production and vessel utilization. And by having these collaborations, that's where we really get together with the producers and the end users to solve these challenges, to have them advance at the same pace so that we can have the technologies ready, the fueling infrastructure ready to go at the same time. And for many of these, you know, hydrogen is the key component. They may be in different forms as liquid hydrogen carriers. And the other thing we're seeing is it's highly variable among the different vessel types. So we start with electrification largely on the harbor craft and vessels that have shorter distances, and then looking towards hydrogen and fuel cells and other alternative fuels for the longer haul as we get into cruise, and then as we get into long haul cargo. Each of these are a stepwise process where our industry can learn and grow in what we need to do for this energy transition. And so that's why having cruise as a key component of this really is also an enabler for the other vessel types to be able to eventually get to the long haul cargo. That's really the toughest to solve challenge overall. So altogether, we're figuring it out, and there's some forerunners, but it's really the question that's driving the maritime industry right now is trying to find that convergence on which fuel types.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Steve, if you had a comment you want to jump in with?
Yeah, just to add to this conversation, thanks, Jennifer. But I do want to point out that obviously how the determining the fuel path is one of the building blocks, the major building blocks out there for decarbonization of the maritime industry. And I just want to give Jesse for the World Maritime Forum for your building blocks of discussing the elements that we must have going forward. We are continuing to collaborate with this in certain because this is a national issue too, as Jennifer was pointing out, and exploring lots of different ways. But we are collaborating with City Light and Pacific Northwest National Laboratory on hydrogen storage on a project with them. So we're continuing to look for opportunities for us to advance in that work as well. And we know, let's just say this, there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy about this whole issue of energy going forward. That's not a pun I made on purpose, but you know, but advancing this work is lots of different areas to do that. We look for further collaboration and in partnerships to look at that at all levels and internationally as well. And that was part of our being here at an international conference and talking about that, to looking for other areas around the world that we can collaborate with as well.
Great, thank you. If we can hear from Jeremy at K2 up in Alaska.
Hi, this is Jeremy Shea with KTOO, Public Radio in Juneau, Alaska. A few questions for Jan Swartz, kind of along the lines with the R&D team. I'd never heard of cruise ships, cruise companies having R&D teams. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that. You know, how big is the team? How much of it is focused on net zero emissions goals, and what sort of investments the company has made in it?
Sure. So I talked about our green, we literally call them green team. They have green t-shirts at Holland America Group, right? That represents our brands and participates in the larger efforts of Carnival Corporation. Because we believe that the world as we sit here does not have the, total solutions. We think between now and finding that there's lots of little improvements that can add up to big impact. And so our green teams are actually composed of cross-functional representation from virtually every department of our company. By that, I mean, we have folks on the green team in deployment and itinerary planning, right, that actually plan the routes that our cruises take. We have folks from our technical operations team that are looking at what are adjustments to equipment that can help us, or automation around that equipment. We have folks from our port ops team that look at shore power installation, and then we have folks from our marine and fuel teams, and then we have folks from our hotel team, because depending on the air conditioning load upon the ship, that affects the energy requirements and thus how much power we need, and thus how much carbon we're creating. And so something as simple as making sure our HVAC systems are totally finely tuned can make a big difference. And so this cross-functional team comes together and reviews both ongoing operational results, making sure our capital and our operating cost plans have the proper investment to achieve our ambitions, and also participates on the corporation's larger research and development efforts across Carnival Corporation's 9 brands, where we divvy up the projects across different brands and across different ships in different parts of the world to advance the game together and then share best practices. So that is our internal approach. And of course, we engage with external stakeholders like many of you on this call, as well as, large fuel companies and technology providers and people who regularly approach us with new ideas. And so we think that this effort focused on the first green corridor will help us access even more potential ideas so that we can get to better answers faster.
And does any of
Kelly,
that research get shared, or is it just kind of, there's competitive advantage issues in the mix? Like,
No,
how does everyone else benefit from that?
It's absolutely shared internal in our corporation across brands. And then we actively participate in Kelly's committees for the Cruise Line Industry Association, where she has working committees that share best practices across the cruise industry. And then, of course, we also, as a corporation, participate in other maritime industry coalitions to advance this objective. So it's happening on multiple levels, and we think that this focused set of activities, particularly in this region, which is so important to us all and known for innovation, will help us further propel progress.
And if I could just jump in and add on behalf of industry, we also recognize just the steep challenge the entire maritime sector faces in decarbonizing by 2050, and the fact that the technologies that are going to be needed don't exist really warrant R&D at a significant level. So we've partnered with 7 other international associations in the shipping and maritime world to make a proposal to the International Maritime Organization to develop an R&D fund that would operate at some scale to actually be able to develop these kinds of technologies. So Carnival Corporation, Royal Caribbean Group, Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings, MSC Cruises, and many others are willing to invest deeply into these types of collaborative R&D funds, because it is going to take that level of investment to be able to develop the technologies that don't currently exist. But what I think a hallmark of the cruise industry is, who have already invested billions of dollars in technologies, many of which Jan spoke about on behalf of the Carnival Corporation, and what they've developed has been open source and shared with other industries. And I can imagine that as we develop more and more of these technologies, that'll still be the case for the industry.
Great, thank you. Looks like, Mark, you have another question there.
I do. Can you hear me? Is my mic still on?
Yep.
Jen, you started to, or sorry, Kelly, I believe it was, started to address this when she started talking about international collaborations. I spent pretty much all the last 15 years in Svalbard, Norway. It's in the Arctic, where due to extremely strict environmental laws, they have enacted a great many cruise not guidelines, cruise rules, basically controlling emissions, no heavy oils, access limits on where you can go. They've severely restricted those, things you can do on shore, and so on and so forth. Many ship operators up there have also undertaken efforts such as zero pollution things on board, no single-use plastics and things like that. A lot of this also exists in Antarctica. My question is, to the extent you're aware of these measures that your lines use, how willing are you to implement them here where the rules aren't as strict?
Well, I'll start, and then Jan, you should certainly follow on. I think that's one of the great untold stories of the cruise industry, which is just how highly regulated it is everywhere around the world. And whereas Norway, which is a region where many of our member lines cruise, and CLIA is actively involved in, is one of many regions, just like here in the Pacific Northwest, Alaska and Canada, that is very focused on the cruise industry and how they can partner together. I can tell you that many of these measures that are implemented in Norway are implemented across the entire CLIA cruise line fleet. Certainly, Jan can speak with great detail about Holland America Line and Seabourn, and many of the companies, all of the companies in the Carnival Corporation who have these really robust measures in environmental sustainability that wherever they're sailing, they employ. So Jan, you might want to pick up on that part.
Sure. I think, when we find good ideas, we pursue them vigorously. And I think we've made enormous strides as it relates to single-use plastics, where we systematically evaluated fleet-wide at Carnival Corporation every single-use plastic, whether it's stirring straws to milkshake, I mean, you name it, and systematically reviewed and eliminated dramatic amounts of single-use plastics. Similarly, we've had an intense focus on, significantly reducing food waste as another way that we intend to contribute to the world. So I think when we find good ideas sparked by any form of collaboration, we evaluate how can we pursue them at larger scale and also share them as others do across the cruise industry. And what I think is really exciting about this particular Green Corridor initiative is that we believe that it will pull in also other folks in maritime, other folks in fuels, other folks in supply chain, and that we can tap that collective learning to push ourselves forward faster.
Okay. All right, very good. Jesse, I saw your hand up earlier. Was there something you wanted to add?
Honestly, I thought Steve covered it very well. I just wanted to say that one of the real opportunities with this corridor is to answer some questions that are specific to cruise. We were talking about the need for the whole global shipping industry to transition, and that's absolutely true. But there are some specific questions that need to be answered about the cruise segment, and I think this group is very well positioned to do that. So I'm very happy to hear about the desire to work collaboratively and share best practices. I think Jeremy, you're really onto something there, actually, with your question about making sure that the knowledge is transferred. While this corridor is still under formation, developing a framework to maximize that exchange is going to be an important success factor, in my opinion.
Great, thank you, Jesse. Commissioner Fellman, did you have a comment?
I just also wanted to note that the first movers here are even within the cruise industry, because this is a branded industry where people choose which line want to distinguish themselves. This could be an advantage competitively.
Okay, great. We are just about out of time in this room here, so we will conclude the media availability today. We're more than happy to answer any further questions you may have via email or phone. Feel free to reach out and get in touch, and we'll provide you answers as soon as we can. Thanks again for joining us.